Shop Talk is back. With the support of LSETF, we're sat down with some young, brilliant entrepreneurs to learn the secret behind their success so that just maybe we can do the same thing. Tola, how are you?
I'm good. I'm okay. I'm as okay as Nigeria permits.
I love, you know what I really love about this is how free people feel to speak. Just because like we almost don't waste a minute. And I say this because, different conversations and it's kind of just consistent. The circumstances of Nigeria and how much it affects well-being.
Yeah.
Sorry, please.
Yes. I mean, I'm as okay as Nigeria permits. I feel like just, drawing from what you're saying, I feel like a lot of people in our generation are trying very hard to not be politically correct, right? Which is why you're probably getting a lot of free, freedom in their speech, and people are saying how they really feel. Recently, I've been taught to sort of try to tap into how I'm really feeling. In Nigeria, whether you're okay or not, how are you? I'm fine.
Yeah.
You're not fine, bro. You're not fine.
I think we struggle with that, with whether that question is ever genuine. It's sometimes it feels impulsive. So the question is the person really asking how I am?
Yeah. But I think it's also growing up in this kind of environment where even if you said you weren't okay, nobody was going to do anything about it, right? So we sort of learned that I'm okay was the answer to that question, and you didn't need to think it through, right? But recently, like I've been trying to think it through, like, am I okay? No, I'm not. What's going on? Trying to. I mean, it's very difficult for me to process my thoughts, especially when it's like if it's other things, I will process properly. But when it's personal, it's difficult. Like because I always feel like there's so much to do. Like I can't be thinking of myself. But...
So, like bouncing off of that, right? How important is that balance, though? Right? Because yes, there's so much to do and there's work to be done. And I think that we're all kind of keen to it. It's probably especially right now, the way the state of the economy and everything is, there consistently becomes more to do because unless you do more, you don't get enough to even have what you had before. Yeah. Right? But then how important is that balance of being mentally and personally okay in order to do what you've got to do?
Personally, I think it's very important. I won't say I've done a good job at creating that balance, right? There are lots of things that we shy away from and that are demonized. Like I went to therapy in 2019, right? For several reasons. And it was good. Like it was good.
I don't know. I haven't. I advocate for it because I think that it's important that we realize that it's important to have these kind of conversations that we've struggled to have culturally for a long time, especially men, right? Because the whole bravado and the whole idea of toxic masculinity, right? But what is it like?
Therapy?
Just being in that chair with someone you don't know. I mean,
So I went once a week again because of time, but it was therapy that was also aided with medication. I didn't like the medication bit of it because it just that messed me up. I actually forced myself to stop taking that and wean myself off it. But the talking to someone thing was good, right? Because it's like gambling. So let me explain something about gambling, right?
I want to process how that ends up being good.
Yeah,
right?
no,
So
I'm going to...
positive side of gambling.
I'll come back to it. Nobody ever wins. The house always wins in gambling. Everybody knows the house always wins. But everybody still goes to win something. Like, do you see how silly that notion is, because what that says to me is it's not really about winning. It's about the feeling of wanting to win, right? Or wanting to even play. The same thing as therapy. You're not sure if this person is keeping your information to themselves. You're not, but that feeling of wanting to just let go, as you wouldn't be able to let go with people that you are sure would judge you or would, might take what you're saying out
Take it
of
somewhere
context and stuff like that. People that will take your, conversations out of context and that might bring it up in, this is somebody you're never going to see again. Right? Or unless you put them on a retainer. So that feeling, it's not necessarily about the end, because he's not going to provide a solution. The solution is you talking and letting go, right? And pouring out to somebody what you've kept to yourself, and even things that you don't know you've kept, and things that you don't know you are dealing with. Because I went to therapy and I was like, yeah, I'm paying for a friend. Literally, like, this is what a friend should be.
Yeah.
But I'm literally paying for a friend I can choose to never see again, and who might forget this conversation once we're done with the session, or just keep it so that he can reference it for someone else, to help someone else.
Yeah.
There's nothing personal for him. And there's nothing personal. For me, it's personal because I'm letting go, and I feel like I have this friend that has no choice than to listen to me, right? But would also tell me the truth. Because everything I would say, he would repeat it back to me and say, do you know this is what they're saying? And you're like, oh, wow. I'm hurting myself.
I think it's interesting, the idea of getting to actually really hear yourself. So I think, at least from my understanding, right, and even when I have conversations, like even, sitting down like this, it will surprise you, the things that you say and the things that you think and the things that you, that are hiding in your, in your thought processes or whatever it is. How much deeper, I guess, as human beings that we think ourselves, and how much more we analyze or weigh circumstances and all that kind of stuff.
I think for a business leader, which is sort of like where I am, I think you probably even need like two different types of therapists. One that will help you with work and then one that will help you with like your personal life or emotional and stuff. Because building a business in Nigeria is hard, right? And which makes building a startup harder. People always use the word startup loosely. Startups and SMEs are two different things. Startups and businesses are two different.
So think Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon. What you're able to do with a startup is achieve the kind of growth in less time than a traditional business will. So an SME or, and which is why it is funded by a different asset class, right? It's not private equity funded unless it's at the later stage, and it's not necessarily at the early stage debt funded. It's usually private equity, venture capital funded. The venture capital asset class was created for startups, right? Or thrives mostly in startups, because if you meet your traditional investment banker, they usually hate that asset class, because that asset class is really betting. What you're trying to achieve with that asset class is returns, high risk, high returns, right? Whereas some of these businesses or startups don't have fundamentals either market-wise or even globally. So they don't have pictures that you can, or fundamentals that you can compare them against. So in this market, except for other startups that compete with us, you would not find, it will be very absurd. The idea that Spleet, was born out of is actually absurd in the West African market, right? And when you're doing comparables, you're even doing comparable globally, you're doing comparables to two companies at once. So we've taken part of what this company does and part of what this company does and try to fit it into the West African market. So that's what a startup is. And, for traditional companies, if you had a 70% year-on-year revenue growth, that would be awesome, right? And you had some profits, that would be awesome. For a startup in the beginning, what you want to have is maybe minimum 3 to 5 times, or even sometimes 10 to 20 times year-on-year growth with losses. Because what you're leveraging and what you're trying to do is prove a point first, right? What that point you're trying to prove does for you is take market share, social re-engineering, which is something we know we do with like landlords and homeowners, and just sort of create brand equity, right? So venture capital comes in for you to be able to shore up those losses, right? So you can pay salaries from the venture capital when you raise money. There's also other asset class, which is like angel investors who sort of come in before the VC, the early stage VC. But yeah, that's what a startup is. It's two different things. Yeah. People will call their SME a startup. It's not. The word startup is not literal, right? Like it's not. It starts up, right? Yeah. It's that. So it's two different things. It's the kind of things we see at Tesla, So yeah, in terms of building a startup is doubly hectic, right? And returning those kind of metrics 5 times, 3 times year on year. So if I did 100K in revenues this year, I have to do 300 to 500K next year. And then I do 5 times and 5 times and 5 times, until I can exit or IPO or any of those things, or until we're profitable, right? It's difficult because you have the pressure of having shareholders. They might be kind people or nice people, but nobody gives you money for free, right? They also understand the risk because it can die today, right? You might hit more losses than you need to meet. Different things happen. Product market fit might be out of place. Certain things can happen. Founders might give up, which is not their fault. So many things can happen. But because we're not an environment that celebrates failure, right?
And when you say that, are you talking globally? Are you talking specifically to Nigeria?
I'm talking about the West African market. When we don't celebrate failure, I will give you an example. In the US, VCs would fund a second-time founder very fast. Faster than anything. Faster than a greater idea. Because if he's failed, he knows how to win. Does that make any sense?
So he knows how to not fail, at least a new area to not fail.
Exactly. He knows. Because building a startup today, like this will be my second startup, but this will really be my first VC-backed startup, right? And there's so many things I've learned today in the span of 3.5 years that if I started something else, right, because I've learned those things, I would hit certain numbers and certain metrics in 3 months that I've hit in 3.5 years. Just because I know those things, right? There are just certain things that a new founder will not know that I know, right? That will give me an edge over him. But because here we don't celebrate failure, right? Yeah. We demonize.
We just think that means you can't do it.
You can't do stuff. Yeah. We don't fund learning. We don't fund education. Because
it's very hard to fund learning when the money is very little.
Which is fair. Yeah. Which is fair. But we fund a lot of other frivolous things. Yeah. If we're saying that, right? Why not fund things that might bring returns? You know, because when you fund a first-time founder, you're funding his education. If he hits it and gets it right, all well and good. But if he doesn't, it might mean that he's going to build something else that he might get right. Right. So because of that, therapy, you need therapy. I feel like I advocate for it. I tell people, man, if you can talk to somebody about your journey, because your wife will not understand as a startup founder. Your friends will not understand if they're not startup founders. The only time you will feel like you're being heard is around other startup founders. Like you are speaking the same language, you know. And so you need that friend that, you know, you pay to listen to you.
It's hard friend.
Yeah, you know, that can be logical with you, to follow you through that.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Spleet.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am pretty much a novice. In fact, yes, I'm a novice. Let's not even say pretty much, right? So when I hear Spleet, my immediate comparison, obviously, is probably, I'm sure you've heard it before, is Airbnb, but slightly a different space, right? Because you're not looking simply at vacations, but you're looking at short stays to long-term rentals, right? How did this come about? What things you need to put in space? What things you need to put in place to achieve? Where does tech come in as well?
Spleet started in 2017. My co-founder, Dolapo, takes the credit for that. He actually had the idea. He had moved back from the UK, and I think for him it was just absurd to pay 1 year's rent. It makes no sense if you think about it. And I think that just says how bad the economy is. Because what it said to him was that there was low trust, right? Which is really why it started, the Nigerian economy sort of switched to yearly rent in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. So he was couch surfing because he was at one of our friends, and he just sort of had this idea. So he was in real estate at the time, but what he was doing was building, right? And acquisition and just a few rentals here and there. So he would acquire property on behalf of his customers and then just help them, monetize those assets traditionally, right? So 1 year, 2 years rent, just help them with all. And because he's a lawyer, he already understands all the how those transactions work. And I was somewhere else building with my friends. We're building something else. We were actually building an AI bot for financial transactions. It's funny I say that because today they're popular. At the time, it made no sense. So some of the banks sort of use them now. But I think at that time, that idea was failing, what I was building with my friends. So he knew I was in the tech space. So we had done some business together before, or tried to do some business together before. My family's business is real estate, ironically. And at the time, I'd worked in banking, I'd flown planes, worked in banking, and then worked in fintech, right? Which is sort of where I got into like products full time. So he calls me up and he's like, yo, I have this idea, right? I was like, okay, I can think through it with you. And we would meet and we would talk. And then, my co-founder, being who he is, just executed on it, right? And he started with the short stays, which is the Airbnb model, right? So it was December and a few people were coming into town as usual. So he started to find landlords that would want to do those short stays, which wasn't really the core business, but he just wanted to see how it would work. And he was just brokering those deals. And he would tell me, he was excited about it. And he had gone and built like a splash page on the website, very, very bootstrappy way of doing things. And he was already earning some revenue. But in 2018, in January, he now wanted to do the long stay thing. And the solution really was to provide monthly rental. It's really that simple. But we took it a notch higher, we wanted people to also pay for their services monthly. So their power. We added vanity services like cleaning once a week, and then maintenance. So another thing about living here is that is the artisan problem, right? And he wanted for the homeowner to get their property or to keep their property the same way, they had given it to him, and for the person living in the space to have optimum service. So if a light bulb even went out, somebody was there the next day to replace it. It's the Uber lifestyle, removing ownership from your life and just giving you access, right? And Uber has shown that people would pay for access or for comfort if they didn't have to do all those things and they could sit down to do more advanced things, right? And that was it. So we built that model. And so at this time we're talking more often. I was like, do this way, do this that way, do this way, do that way. And I was already like helping him with like customer acquisition and just trying to figure out how this was a product and how it will work. And he says to me like, bro, man, I'm looking for a co-founder and you are the right person. Like you've been at this for a while with me. He had somebody else that would be his co-founder as well. So it was supposed to be 3 of us. And it started out as 3 of us, to be honest. So that other person, I was doing product and operational work. And that person was doing like technology stuff. So I was doing all the product design and all of that, and I'll feed it to him. Started very bootstrapping. We bootstrapped for 15 months. So we weren't earning anything or earning little to nothing.
Just keeping it going.
Yeah, it was just 3 of us. And our goal was very simple. How many spaces can we add on? What's the lead time to fill those spaces, right? And what is the occupancy rate? It really was simple. So that's how we launched Long Stay. We had this man who was a client of my co-founders who, just took a risk on us and said, I would sell this property here and I'll buy these 2 flats and I'll furnish them. And if you people can say you can do this monthly thing, that's fine. If you cannot pay me my rent in the first month, right? Or you can't fill the spaces and you can't pay me my rent in the first month, then I'll take my property back. I won't lose anything. Because what I've actually even done is buy nice flats in a nice part of town and sold this. So we actually helped him sell the first house and then helped him buy these 2 flats, 2 4-bedrooms. And we filled this in 48 hours.
48 hours?
Yes. So we filled, it was...
When you say, because I know that you go into a shared living space, and so did you fill it with someone that wanted to rent all 4, or did you fill it with 8 different people renting each room?
8 people. So it was, we didn't have anything apart from Instagram, WhatsApp, Twitter. And we had a splash page which just had information. Like you couldn't do the complex bookings you can do today on our platform. And what we just did was we pushed it out into our community and it just sort of like went, So by the time we had the keys, the first flat was filled, 4 guys moved in, right? And then 2 girls moved into the next flat that same day. They had booked it, right? They moved in maybe like 2 days after. And then by the next day, 2 other girls had moved into the next flat. So what we had sort of created was male flats, female flats, because we still, like you were saying before, we didn't understand how co-living would work, right? It wasn't something that had been tested in this market, except for, how we our families had done it in the past, where they co-lived, in the villages and things like that. Yeah. But in the modern era, it's not being tested.
Yeah, and I have questions about that because I'm just like culturally, the way I look at it at least, is how do you get away with something like that? Because do people want to live with people that they don't know, don't have any idea their background, don't have any idea what may or may not have in the space that you're living in? Because I just feel that culture we're somewhat very private, and we almost want to divide ourselves from people to have that level of privacy. So how does
I think
how's
that,
co-living worked in terms of your?
first of all, for the long stay, we have 98% occupancy month on month. So co-living is happening, right? And about 91% of our spaces are co-lived, right? I think what it was almost in every aspect of our business was social re-engineering, right? Because when we started, it was really about affordability.
Yeah.
And people will be like, if I can live on the island and what I get is a room in a shared space, let me try it out. And I can cancel this thing monthly if it doesn't work for me. I'm not tied down for a year, right? So let me try it out. And you find that people are there for 3 years. So it works, right? You still get your privacy at the end of the day. You're right. We're very private people. There's low trust in the economy. But what people really need, which is 1 and 2 beds, are not being built, right? That's the data we have today, right? So because those things are not being built, what really makes sense for what people can afford is co-living, you know? So I think people would pick their finances, affordability, over their mental, how they've thought about things over time, and just switch that. That's the compromise they would make. Because one, you can make a compromise for. You can't make a compromise unless you steal, right?
If you can't afford,
you can't afford it, and half of the apartments, buildings that are coming up, the way they're structured for rental, the young population can't afford it. What are they building it for? It can't be our parents who already own homes. Do you understand what I'm saying? And even families that live in our spaces today, just like the fact that they can pay monthly. So I think co-living is, I'm bold to say that we were one of the pioneers for that, bringing that into the market, and it's catching on. Because again, we're in a generation that understands how the world is, even though we live in Nigeria. There are lots of Nigerians, young Nigerians that haven't left Nigeria, but experience the world because of the internet, right? I don't know if you watched this interview Bill Gates had when he was talking about the internet in the 80s, and he was explaining different things, and the guy was teasing him and saying, but there's Walmart, and he was trying to explain what Amazon became. But the guy was like, there's Walmart. And he's trying to explain different things, and the internet has given people access to how things work globally, right? Imagine a future where, because I'm a Spleet member, I could work globally in the sense that I have a Spleet space in Nigeria and I stay in Nigeria for 3 months, right? I could just switch to a Spleet space in Kenya and do my consultancy job there for 6 months and then switch to my Spleet space. It gives you...
That's a bit of a nomad kind of life, right?
It is. It is a nomad kind of life. But if you look at the jobs that are high earning or are beginning to be high earning, those are the kind of jobs.
Yeah.
Software engineering, product management, things like that. Things that require people to move and to experience different things, right? Developer relations, things like that.
So what is the role, I guess, and when you come up with things like this, and I know it wasn't originally your idea, but you've worked in building different kind of businesses, like you said you were doing before you even joined Spleet, of finding holes in the market and that you can plug up when coming up with a business idea.
So that's not how business ideas work for me, right?
How do they work?
For me, market or not, I have to believe it's something I can build, right? I have to be able to think it high level from beginning to end, right? And it has to be something I need. first of all.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
And so, I mean, I think that falls into, yes, I talk about the market and the holes in the market.
Yeah.
But effectively, it's solving a need, and a lot of the time, it starts with a personal need.
Yeah. So it's first a personal thing, right? I joined Dolapo as Spleet because it made sense. Like it made sense because I pay my rent today monthly, and it just made sense that, bro, I don't have annual rent. Like it actually doesn't make sense. Like I'm saving money every time to meet up next year. What we found out was that 65% of the people that pay annual rent in Lagos today borrow that rent, and they're in a constant cycle of borrowing their rent, just because it doesn't make sense, right? But for me, ideas are a dime a dozen. Execution is what matters. And I have to be able to think through that I can execute, right? With Spleet, that seems to everybody like a no-brainer, right? We still have challenges. We had challenges, we still have challenges. Because even though there's a huge gap in the market, right? We're literally playing a mind game, right? And there's a lot of thought leadership and marketing that goes into, playing that mind game, right? Telling people that the way you live today doesn't make sense, But even though it's fact, and it might sound to us like fact, some people just, it's fact, but what am I going to do about it? That's how we've always lived. And that's usually like most people's, so it's always tough, sort of converting people's mindsets. I mean, just because of affordability, I think in terms of maybe occupancy rates and things like that, we're doing better than most, right? You don't see us advertise a lot because the real problem we have is a supply problem. It's convincing the homeowners to take monthly. Yeah,
Because, and I think it speaks a little bit to the generational thing as well. Because like you said, I'm assuming that the majority of the homeowners you have are
older
people as opposed to younger.
Yeah, right.
And older people culturally have gotten used to 1 year rent.
Yeah.
Then there's the trust issue, like you said.
Yeah.
So how do you then, you're trying to solve an issue that's really a younger person problem, but you need older people to solve it. And so how does that work?
I think what we've sort of done over time, I mean, we started with older people, family and friends, putting their spaces on. But over time, what we started to do was two things. People could now host their spare bedrooms, right? You have a 4-bedroom, you don't need 4 bedrooms. You're literally living in one. Because you have 4 bedrooms, you turn the other one into a study, right? Monetize the 3rd one and the 4th one, right? Have people dwell with you. What we find that happens with co-living is people also become friends and business partners. They collaborate, right? We are collaborating much more than our parents did, again, maybe because of the internet, right? So that's one. Two, we turned it into a financial model thing. On Spleet today, on average, as a homeowner, you would earn about 10% year on year. I don't think there's anywhere in Nigeria you will get that kind of return on real estate.
And that was a question, because there are two ends to that, right? It sounds profitable for the owner, right? And maybe more convenient for a member because you're paying month by month, but doesn't it end up more expensive?
If you do it yearly, right? But again, we need to remove our mindsets from that. Because you don't earn money yearly. You don't have that leverage financially. You're going to borrow for it and pay 25%.
Fair, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So why not just pay as you earn, right? And if you're paying a premium as opposed to going traditional, that would probably be a 4 or 5% markup on what you would have paid if you paid the money up front. And then you get comfort. And then you're not thinking about next year's rent. You know that once your paycheck comes,
you put this aside and you pay.
Spleet debits you, and you're living. You don't have to think about that.
So there are two things you mentioned that I want to touch on. One is collaboration. Before we get to collaboration, you said that you have to, when you're working, you're taking on a business idea, right? You have to be able to see it think about it from beginning to end.
Yeah.
What are the kind of questions probably that I don't think of asking that you think are integral to ask if you're going to actually go into a business?
So I'll use I have this idea now that I've been working on. And the first thing it's a problem for me, right? And I was like, okay, if I build this thing, what would anybody use it, right? So I asked people, would you use it? Oh yeah, this makes sense for me. This makes sense for me. This makes sense for me. Before, when I was thinking about solving problems, I used to think about how I would generate revenue. That doesn't happen anymore. What I think about now is, would it be useful for people? Like, would 1 million people download this app and use it to save 5 minutes of their lives, right? Save 10 minutes of their lives. And if I can think through that and I see that a lot of people will use this, not because they're going to pay money for it, right? Let's not think about money. Let's think about quality of life, right? Or making processes easier, right? Is this useful to the economy? Yes? Okay, that's one. Two, so that's taken care of. There's a market, as you were saying, right? People will use it. They might not pay for it, but they will use it. Two, if the people are not going to pay for it,
who
will? Right? Let 1 million people use it, but how am I going to monetize this thing, right? I might not monetize it for the first 5 years. I don't have to. Again, why startup, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? It's how economies sort of grow, taking risk like that and being funded to take risk like that. That's how I'm thinking about my ideas now. I mean, when I started Spleet, it had to be like revenue, this, that, we're thinking about how much money we're making. But now I want to solve a problem. But the revenue model doesn't necessarily have to be customer, subscription or whatever that is, right? It can be advertising. And I think this is also what I was saying in the beginning, that as a founder, you learn your first 3 years.
Failures,
yes, you learn from your failures. You learn from certain things, that there are multiple revenue models that exist that you don't have to think about when building something. First, think about how you can deliver quality service, right? And then deliver that service. It will monetize itself. At the end there are revenue models that are not the traditional revenue models we read in economics and B2B, B2C, B2G. They're not, right? And that's how the world works today. I'll give you an example. Facebook bought Instagram, a non-revenue generating business, right? And because they could understand how they would make their money back, they bought it. Same thing as Google and YouTube. YouTube wasn't charging anything for videos, right? But Google bought YouTube, right, at a certain amount, and then has started to monetize, and they made their money back from YouTube. So when we start to think about our world like that, right, it's easier to execute on our ideas. That's what I mean by thinking about the thought, the whole process. Can I deliver value? Would people appreciate this value? If people would appreciate this value and I can sort of infiltrate your lifestyle or your comfort, right? Or just make things easier for you or processes easier for you, down the line you will pay to maintain that, right? So I think revenue model is important, but thinking about revenue model first is something...
It usually kills an idea too.
Yeah, it kills an idea. It kills almost every idea in this economy. If you look at the US and Silicon Valley, there's so many things that don't make sense to us. WhatsApp shouldn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
If the founders were thinking about revenue from day one, We never paid to use WhatsApp.
I'm gonna have to ask the question because I'm still, I mean, after, I know Facebook bought it, right?
Yeah.
Is it data? I mean, I'm still trying to work out where the source is for them.
I think for them,
WhatsApp.
it's two things. I don't know if they're selling the data. I can't speak to that. But I know there's a data play. But if you look at some economies, they've started monetizing WhatsApp. India, for instance, you can pay for stuff via WhatsApp, right? So you can pay merchants on WhatsApp. Instagram too, you can pay merchants on Instagram. You can, people that advertise on Instagram, right, today would pay ad fees to Facebook to sort of monetize. Do you see how, you know, sometimes you're building something for somebody else's business, or you're building something that's just valuable to this other thing, to plug into this other thing. I think it speaks to where our economy is, that we're not really value driven yet. That's why we're not thinking about our ideas like that. We're thinking about our ideas from a revenue standpoint all the time. Revenues will come. Revenues are very important because something has to pay over time. VC cannot pay for it over time. Fundamentally, there has to be a revenue model. But I think, first of all, you need to think about delivering value. Like, what and how will I deliver value? And would people appreciate this value? People will pay for something they appreciate.
So what's the next question? You've thought about value, product idea. Does someone need it? Will people? Is it helping a problem for you? Will other people need it? Will other people use it? If people aren't going to pay for it, who will? What's next?
Who's building it with me?
And then we come back to collaboration.
Yes. Having a co-founder is very important because I know myself and I know my strengths, but that also means I know my weaknesses and I know what I'm not good at. So you need a co-founder, I mean, in this tech space anyway, that understands the things you're not good at, right? I think team is next, right? So you find a co-founder, someone that's ready to stick it through with you. Friend or family or somebody that's just competent enough, right? That you can have that bond with. Because co-founding is like a marriage, you know? And VCs always say they don't want to fund single founders. Because, you know, the Bible says, one will kill 10,000. Two, 10,000. And that math doesn't make sense. Do you because what that math has done is multiplied that by 10, not necessarily 2. Even though it multiplied, you know, 1 by 2 to give you 2, it says 1,000 will kill 10. I mean, 2 will kill 10,000, not 2,000. So you will do so much more together. Like the multiple is 10 times than one person.
I have to bring about, and I know that you're doing it in different spaces and you're doing it with people, right? But how does that, in our current culture, because we're seeing a lot of different things are playing into the things that you said, we haven't got to the point culturally or in our society where we're not simply money driven, right? So a lot of the time people are looking at where they're getting their money back when it comes to a business idea. And then culturally, and I think that this is part of that as well, partnering with people, how do we begin to actually do that? Because I think a lot of the time you're thinking, how much can I eat of this? And if I have to share it with someone else, and not thinking long term. So how do we begin to shift and inspire people to collaborate more?
That's interesting because if you think like that, you can't raise VC money, first of all. And you can't scale without, like, how are you going to do it? One of the bigger tech startups today has 6 co-founders, right? So you can imagine how that pie is shared today, right? But they're big. And there's success. I think we need to sort of remove our mindset from that I want the whole pie thing. What does it mean if I have a pie that's worth $1 million and I have it all? To we have a pie that's worth $1 billion and we're just 3 of us. Do you see that it's better to own $300 million than $1 million.
Yeah.
And because that's where, again, as that Bible passage says, two people will take you, right? More than one person will take you, basically. And it's just the basic math. You will never go as far. And once people start to understand it, I'm understanding that, you know, as I build today, as we build Spleet today, right? We have a whole team. I was telling you earlier, there's so many things I see they're doing that I don't even know before time. You can never build anything without a team.
How do you, because I'm just enjoying this because I'm just enjoying learning, right?
Please.
Because I think in concept it's a very great idea. How do you begin to actually put those things in place where one, you can have a team that I guess are as passionate about your product as you are, and is committed to it, and understand and see the value in what is being created enough that their level of commitment aligns with what is required, what is needed, where, you know, you're not training someone in the thing that you're good at for them to run off and do it elsewhere, as opposed to actually sticking together. Because I'm just thinking about different things that you see in this environment that make that hard.
So, few things. First of all, you can't have the mentality that somebody's going to take everything. What's the point, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not building a company just to deliver value to the world and yourself. You're also imparting people with knowledge, right? And you want to get to a stage as a founder. Well, I want to get to a stage as a founder that someone like Daniela, who works on my team, can tell me tomorrow, oh, I'm going off to build this thing, and I can support it and I fund it because I know where that work ethic is going to come from. It came from us building together. Finding these people, I always say hiring is hard in Nigeria, but finding these people is your job as CEO. That's what separates the good from the great CEOs. Hiring. Hiring is one of those things, right? Some other things are flukes. Hiring is one of those things because you have to continue to sell that vision. One thing that was, I look back at our journey now, and one thing that has been amazing is that 4 out of 5 people in our management team lived in a Spleet space first before we hired them. Or was it? So Daniela, for instance, was a Spleet space host. She was our first host that tested the platform, right? The monthly platform. And she was earning her thing monthly. And in a week, we had done, like someone had moved into her space. And, you know, for her, it was. So when we had that role, you know, she just joined us because we didn't need to teach her what we were doing.
She saw the value.
She already saw the value as someone that generated revenue from this. Joey, who's as Chief Technology Officer, same thing, right? He was building something else and he lived in one of our spaces. Made sense. Victor, who's our VP of Comms, moved into a Spleet space first. And he's just like, he started working for us before he officially worked for us. So he was helping out with different things with our comms, language, and stuff like that. And then, you know, it just became a conversation one day. Yo, would you like to join us on this journey? And it's like, man, this thing is exciting. I genuinely want to change this way of living for people. For them, it was, I'm paying my rent monthly. I'm living as comfortably as this. People need to feel like this. So I think in that regard, we've been lucky. But again, it's not necessarily hard to find. So for me, like with a co-founder, and a team, basically, if I was to build something else, which I might do or might not do.
Koi.
I'll be friends with you first. Let's chill. Let me know where your mind's at, what you can do, because everybody has to be keyed into this journey, right? My job is to get you to do your work and to continue to sell the vision to you, amongst other things, right? I can't do day-to-day things, even though in the beginning I did, right? My job gets past that, where I do more high-level things, like raise funds, right? Pitch, you know, things like that. ensure that the team is good, is cohesive, the vision stays intact. And as the vision grows in my mind, I'm communicating that vision to them, right? That's another important thing, because as a founder, you find yourself 10 times, 5 times ahead of the people you know, but you always need to carry them along on that journey. And it needs to be deliberate doing that, you know. So yeah, that I feel like finding people, it's one of the toughest things, because your team makes it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the competency of your team makes it work. You can't do everything yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's funny the amount of scripture that I'm seeing popping out. 'Cause you're talking about communicating the vision and keeping people, and it just brings to mind obviously like Habakkuk, right? Write down the vision and make it plain. And those who see it will run with it, because unless people see the vision, they're not going to go with you. Yeah. You can see that, right? So like how people might not, you might have employees, but if they don't know the vision, they will do their jobs, but they wouldn't be able to flow with the idea of a company.
Like,
I have, sorry.
No, I was going to say, like, we don't have employees. We have a team. And, you know, it's funny now that they send me skits about it, but I'm a huge basketball fan, and I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan. And for me, we are the Chicago Bulls in the 90s, right? And that's how I sort of depict the team to them. It's not employees. You're not coming here to work. Like, you can't, once someone joins the team and starts saying things like, but this is my own job and I'm doing my own job, then you're not supposed to be here, right? Because if someone else doesn't do something right and you know how to get that thing done better, and you don't because you want to stick to your own job, then you don't fit in our, in our team. Because we all revel in customer success wins, in supply wins, business development wins, operational wins. When I fundraise from some particular person we'll be chasing, once that win comes, everybody's in that. You know, it's not my win, it's Spleet's win. And if you're under that umbrella, you're part of the team. Employees sound like people that just work to get a paycheck every month, right? I'm not saying we won't pay you every month, but you need to be part of this vision, you know. So yeah, I just wanted to.
I mean, so there are two things I want to touch on before we wrap up. And the first one is, so you've talked a little bit about how your job changes as a business grows, right? And so doing things like raising money, so seed rounds and things like that. Now, just for an information kind of building awareness. So let's say I'm starting a company and we've started to build. When it's time to now go around and raise money, what are the kind of things that I need to be able to answer, the kind of things that I need to be able to offer somebody that is looking to invest in a business?
I mean, in tech startups, it depends on the stage, right? In pre-seed, you don't necessarily need a financial model. I always say, like, if an investor is asking for a financial model at pre-seed, then they don't know the gamble they're taking. Right? Because you're not investing in a business, you're investing in those two guys and their ability to build this thing they're saying they will build. Right? So that's pre-seed, right? But you want to be able to understand comparables in valuation. So if I'm building something in the prop tech space, who are the people? I mean, you need to understand that financial model regardless. So who are the people building in this space and what did they raise in their pre-seed? And since I'm in the West African markets, there has to be a discount, things like that. So for instance, in our case, we raised $265K in our pre-seed round. And from angel investors and people that knew that they were taking risk, right? Even though at our stage, we had shown some traction. We had bootstrapped for like 15 months. And so there was traction. Again, I mean, I think our tech space is getting to the point where people would fund proper pre-seed without any traction, right? But we had a traction, we had a model. If I was going to build something today, I most likely wouldn't have traction, right? It probably would come from the strength of what I've built before, right? But that's really how it should be. It's an idea. Pre-seed is really pre-seed, right? It's an idea. So you're just giving him something you feel you could throw away, right? But you are hoping it's a gamble, but you're hoping That's not pre-seed. VCs in this market don't really come in at pre-seed, but they will, especially when the idea is solid, you know. And then I think you just cast a wide net to angel investors, early stage venture capitalists, especially ones that will fund things in your vertical. And by vertical, I mean prop tech for us, fintech, health tech. What vertical are you building in?
Yeah.
Find the guys that have funded companies
In the similar
globally.
space,
yeah. I think one of the smartest things to do is to also have an entity that's not Nigerian. Because I won't say too much on that, but I feel like if you're going to raise proper venture capital, because that capital doesn't necessarily exist like that here. You know, most of the companies that will do fund companies here will do pre-seed, seed when the tickets are low, right? But when you're getting to, let's say you want to raise a Series A, 10 million Series A, VCs in the US will do that easy for you, right? Not necessarily, Nigerian VCs will still just put maybe 100K check in that round.
Yeah.
You know, so you want to have an entity that they trust, you know, because they won't directly fund a Nigerian entity. And that's not my fault. That's the volatility of the market.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to do that from day one. Those are the kind of things that you want to start thinking. Once you're structuring, you want to have that structure from day one. So that down the line, when you're raising proper venture capital, they have access.
Yeah.
You know, you have a company that's not, it's not necessarily Nigerian. I think what that also helps you do is build global.
Yeah.
I like that a few Nigerians today, founders, are not thinking about Nigerian problems anymore. They're thinking about global problems, solving global problems. You can check out this company called Backdrop. Very interesting company. It's just a global tourism and lifestyle problem being built by 3 Nigerians, but it's a problem that exists globally. And that's what the internet does, right? It gives you access to global infrastructure, right? You could integrate Stripe today to collect payments. If I had that American entity, my payments would be settled into that entity. So do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Nigerians are thinking more global in terms of building now, right? And I think it's sort of because of the success from Paystacks exit, and you know, people are beginning to say we can't do this.
Well, there's actually something that's in this space.
Yeah, there's something we
have to offer
that's more global than, you know, our local problems. It's nice to solve local problems, but hey.
So, final question. This is a bit of a dumb it down question, right? This is like, so what makes Spleet tech? And because I want to understand this, I'm going to very dumb it down in the sense that Spleet, I've looked in, you don't have an app, right? At the moment,
Mobile. No, it's just web app.
Just a web app. Now, for the sake of real, like, dumb it down, Zara has a website. Zara, like the shopping online, has a website. It's not a tech company, though. What makes Spleet a tech company? What about the infrastructure of it takes it from being a website for a real estate company to actually being...
There's nothing that we do that's physical. As Spleet. Our partners, the cleaning partners, everybody we sort of integrate, right, to distribute their services, might do things physically, might hire people that are doing things physically, but there's nothing we really do that's physical. What we've built is a technology infrastructure to change your life, right? Change how you live, right? So today on Spleet, our members can book laundry subscriptions. Are we the ones delivering that laundry? No. That's Eden Life doing that. Food subscriptions. Are we the ones delivering that food? No. We earn a fee from it because our technology has that infrastructure. So basically customer acquisition on all sides and even supply, distribution, is happening via technology.
Mm.
I mean, in tech world, what people will say, we're a tech-enabled company,
Mm.
right? But there's no real estate thing that we do that's
Yeah.
traditional. We don't have agents. If we did have agents, those agents won't be our agents. They won't be our staff. They will earn fees because of what they do on the platform, right? Just like the homeowners earn their monies. We just earn by providing that infrastructure that helps it scale faster. So if a company that had 10 agents wanted to do the same thing we did without the technology, what would take us 1 year would probably take them 5. Difference. That's what technology sort of does. It reduces time spent, right? But you're spending a lot of money building that infrastructure in the first place. That's why we are a tech company.
Okay. All right. Thank you very, very much,
Thank you.
Tola. Like I could literally do this for a very long time because it's just like going to school. So, but no, I really, really appreciate it. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you very much.
So much.